Hey folks, this hangout's multi-purpose. Primary purpose is to discuss evolution theory to see if atheists can actually provide some kind of evidence, scientific reason to believe in the idea of evolution. But I could discuss other things as well. So anybody in here anybody who's a outspoken uh, philanthropist of the evolution idea might be willing to come in and see how they can convince somebody that it's true, that evolution is a true thing. Be willing to listen to any evidences. Might be might be surprised at the responses you get, providing what you would call evidence of evolution. See if there's any scientific reason to believe in evolution. I know that evolutionists claim it is science. They claim it's scientific. They claim it's, in fact, they claim biology is based on evolution. They can't even do biological science without evolution. That's what we actually hear from them. But let's just see if it's scientific. What's the evidence that evolution is true, and how is it scientific? Just show us the money. Hey, Tommy.
Hey, how you doing, Neff?
Oh, I'm getting by. How's it going?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Just taking it easy today, I guess.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Watched a little football. Hadn't done that in a long time.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know who won. Now. I was watching the Cowboys, but I don't know what happened to them.
Oh.
They haven't been doing too good this year, so
Oh really?
hard to watch. I really haven't watched pro football though in good gosh, probably 4 or 5 years.
Really?
I used to be the biggest football fan around.
Really? I never was I'm not a sports fan. No, when I was in school, I was a heck of an athlete. I was first string on the football team and kick team, punt team, punt return, kick, all that first string, everything. I was a heck of an athlete. But after I stopped playing football in school, I just lost interest in sports.
Sorry. Yeah, that's the sad thing about sports, at least team sports, because yeah, you can watch it, but you can't play it. When I got out of high school, I started playing racquetball. That was back when that was popular, and played that for many years. And that was a cool sport because you could keep on playing all as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But then I kind of hurt my back, and I went back and tried to keep playing, but every time I went back, I kept hurting my back more, so I finally had to give that up. But yeah, it's kind of sad. I love sports. I grew up playing baseball, basketball.
Yeah.
So
now those pre-flood humans, Tommy, they didn't have those back problems. So they could.
Yeah.
Noah probably could have played handball or racquetball till he was 500 years old. It wouldn't have probably been a problem for him.
Yeah, probably not. I'm getting tired of, and I went through this today earlier with somebody, these evolutionists. It's amazing how confident they are, and they rattle off how much of a fact evolution is, and then I press them for my thing is I'll ask them, okay, give me your best example of evolution. Why should I believe in it? And and then they'll just throw something out there like today it was guppies, that. And I said, okay, show me that peer review paper. I need to see the evidence of random mutation and natural selection that adapted these populations of guppies. Mm-hmm. And then he throws a couple titles out there with no link, and he can't give me a link showing that any such Darwinian evolution happened with mutations or selection, any of it verified. None of this is controlled experiments. And, that's their best, I asked for his best example. Mm-hmm. And this goes on, with me constantly with these guys. These guys have nothing when it comes to defending their case. It's just
Mhm.
pathetic. They base this whole worldview in their mind,
Yeah.
through the lens of pure crap that
Yeah,
doesn't exist.
they show, the differences in guppies, but hey, they're all guppies. I mean, so we're talking about evolution. We're asking for evidence of evolution, not evidence that guppies can make varieties of themselves.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I read about guppies a long time ago in a book called Not by Chance by Spetner, and there's a researcher who's been doing this long-term study on guppies that I'm mildly familiar with. His name's David Resnick, and it's one of these deals where he noticed, or he went to the place where the guppies lived one year, and then went back many years later and noticed, he did measurements on their bodies and fin shapes and all this. He noticed that, with the change of environment or whatever, or change of predators, actually, I think it was, that they changed a little bit. They, got a little bumpier or something. But what's kind of come out later regarding these guppies, that it was probably plasticity and not mutation at all.
Right.
And some sort of, either developmental plasticity or plasticity during life.
Phenotypic plasticity.
Yeah, and there's probably no mutations. There's no peer-reviewed paper outlining any. That's why I asked that guy to show me. And so, and that's the thing about a lot of this plasticity thing going on in nature is it can give the illusion of evolution when no such evolution is actually happening.
Right. If you believe evolution and you look at the varieties produced by phenotypic plasticity, the evolutionist goes, look, there it is. Yep. It's happening.
In fact, I would say most of what has been passed off as evolution, quote unquote, Darwinian evolution has gotten the credit, is actually a grand illusion. And the actual truth of the matter is that it's just a plastic response to the environment. And that's it.
Yeah. And then when you try to tell them what phenotypic plasticity is, I've had evolutionists that's actually tell me that that's false. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? You should be all on board with phenotypic plasticity. I mean, in your mind, this is evolution. It's so silly that they would actually, I'm not saying all of them do, but I've seen evolutionists actually say, no, that's not phenotypic plasticity. Because, if creatures have the ability to diverge with limitations, then that doesn't argue for creation, for evolution too well. So they actually deny that it's phenotypic plasticity because by default, phenotypic plasticity has limitations. You can only get what's in the genome. See, the
right.
Plasticity is the phenotype, right? What are the organisms, the information it's got in its genome? That's what can be varied. But that's, not evolution. You need, for evolution to be true, you need a continuous input of new genetic information. So varying the DNA, the phenotype that exists, doesn't support evolution. You got to have a new phenotype, new things added to the phenotype. That's what they don't have.
Well, hey, Remy, you might want to.
Oh, there. Okay. Yeah.
And plasticity generally, I don't think, doesn't involve a mutation. A change in the base code doesn't occur. So again, right there, it's not Darwinian evolution. It's not neo-Darwinian evolution.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's just it's really frustrating because so many people are hoodwinked by this garbage. It's daily. I'll find somebody new who just is on top of the world and thinks we're all idiots, and yet you press them and they've got nothing. Generally the best they'll have is an appeal to authority. Oh, why do all scientists believe it? Well, show me what you got. Show me your best thing. Lay your cards down. Let me see it. I don't know. It's just the whole freaking world is so screwed up. I don't know. Sometimes I get depressed over thinking how just brainwashed everybody is, and consequently, everybody's acting like animals because they think they're animals. What do you expect? If you think you're an animal, that's what you're going to act like.
Yeah, they build their worldview based on the fact that they believe they're a product of evolution.
If you have no consequences, if you have no eternal consequences, then what's to stop you from doing whatever you want, whatever makes you feel good. If that involves killing somebody or raping somebody, as long as you don't get caught, then so be it.
Yeah, logically, all things are supportable, actually, if atheism is true. So there is no such thing as an immoral thing if atheism is true. Atheists will argue with you that's not true, but they're just in denial of the truth of what they believe when they do that.
No, that's true. I never really thought of it that way. I mean, or heard it put in those words that there's no such thing as immoral. Nothing is immoral to them. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, if
that
atheism is true, we're just bags of matter in motion. That's all it is. And so actually morality can't even exist. It's an illusion. And so there is actually nothing immoral, whatsoever if atheism were true. Technically, that would be true.
yeah.
So what's going on, Randy? How you doing tonight?
Looking for someone to talk to, I guess. I got nothing on my mind. Nothing to talk about, just...
Oh, you doing all right?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, creatures do exhibit, I have some quotes here if I can find them. They exhibit considerable limitation into, how they can vary. And I've got some quotations by scientists on that. If I can find them, I'll read a couple for you. It's really interesting statements, very telling.
Well, in all the ways that they do vary, all these various mechanisms, whether it be plasticity or epigenetics, they seem to be mild, slight variations, and that's it. And there's a quote from Gould or what's the other guy? What's his partner's name? Whatever it was, the guy he wrote the book with, one of the two of them, Niles Eldridge. They made a comment. It's a kind of a famous quote that what we actually find in the fossil record is, organisms, fossils, they may vary in a way that, and I'm paraphrasing, that they may be a little bumpier, but they don't really change in any sort of wholesale way. They just sort of appear in the rocks and then they're gone, and then something completely different replaces them. Later on down the road, which that kind of sounds like creation. It sounds like, okay, well, God created these different animals. They kind of change over time in a very slight way, and then they go extinct. And what the evolutionists have it seems like they kind of, because there's no transitionals, they just assume, well, there must have been a jump then. At least Gould did.
Yeah.
That there must have been some sort of a wild jump, unexplainable, mysterious mechanism that caused this completely radically different phenotype to occur in the fossil record. But in reality, there's probably no such jump that's even possible.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely not. Here's a quotation to that effect. This was Richard Lewin, British prize-winning scientist and writer, author of 20 books, 1980. He said, "The central question of the Chicago Conference was whether the mechanism underlying microevolution can be extrapolated to explain the phenomenon of macroevolution. At the risk of doing violence to the positions of some of the people in the meeting, the answer may be given as a clear no." And then there's Gould himself said, and quoted by Gould. Oh no, wait a minute. Let me give you a better one. Alfred, let's see here. Wait. I've got some very interesting ones here. Let's see. Okay, here's this one is by William R. Fix in his book The Bone Peddlers, Selling Evolution, 1984. He said, all competent biologists acknowledge the limited nature of the variation breeders can produce, although they do not like to discuss it much when grinding the evolutionary axe. So, and then there's Raymond G. Bolin in his book The Natural Limits to Biological Change. He wrote, a rule that all breeders recognize is that there are fixed limits to the amount of change that can be produced. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got more like this. Here's Michael Denton, Evolution, A Theory in Crisis, 1985. He said, indeed, the isolation and distinctiveness of different types of organisms and their existence of clear discontinuities in nature have been self-evident for centuries, even to non-biologists. So there's and I've got many more of that to that effect. But the point is that the fixity of species, first written about by people in the early to mid 1800s, was a problem for Darwinian evolution even then, and it's still a problem today. Life has a fixity to it. The species don't change; they vary. They produce variations, but they don't fundamentally change. And so there are severe hard limits to how much change can be had within a type of organism. You just don't get endless variety. Variety, it does not take place in such a way that it produces, new anatomical features and new body plans. It has severe hard limits. And this is something the evolutionists simply cannot agree with. They cannot acknowledge this.
No, that would be that would be total destruction to their theory.
Absolutely.
I got this quote over here that I was thinking about. It's from Gould, and I'll read it. I'll put it on the side. It says, this is from Stephen Jay Gould. He says, this is pretty freaking powerful. Everybody knows that the fossil record doesn't provide much evidence for gradualism. It is full of gaps and discontinuities. Most species don't change. They may get a little bigger or bumpier, but they remain the same species. This remarkable stasis has generally been ignored. If it doesn't agree with your ideas, you don't talk about it. The fossil record doesn't show gradual change, and every paleontologist has known that since Cuvier.
Yeah.
So,
that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, and since they don't show gradual change, that, not a lot of people put this together, but that, for all practical purposes, eliminates the whole neo-Darwinian mechanism of chance, mutation, and natural selection, because that would necessitate a gradual change in the fossil record, right? So if there's no change in the fossil record, then there's no reason to believe that the Darwinian mechanism, the naturalistic mechanism that upholds their paradigm, is even functional at all.
Yeah.
So it must be a more I forgot what the word is, but a rapid diversification mechanism in play, which they've always denied.
Right. So Gould is being honest when he acknowledges the fossils don't show evolution take place. They don't show the forms evolution would expect, and thereby, but he certainly believed it. He believed it anyway. Mm-hmm. So the only way he could believe it is that even evolution takes place in bursts. That creatures rapidly change, and by rapidly I mean within a relatively short number of generations, in populations, and then you've got a fundamentally different kind of creature has come about.
But he didn't have a mechanism. He could only guess what that would be. I guess he kind of played with the hopeful monsters concept, but I don't. As far as I don't know that he really ever came up with a way that animals could change that quickly, relatively quickly,
Well, no, they just have to have blind faith that that random mutation acted on natural selection is going to do it, but without any evidence for that either.
Yeah. I mean, the mutation really is their Achilles heel anyway.
Oh, absolutely. It does the opposite of what the evolutionists claim. They claim it designs marvelous new structural designs and does fantastical things, when the truth is it's been proven for 90 years to do nothing but destroy.
But you know why they're stuck with it? They can't move because they've got to explain the origin of the genome. Yeah. If their theory was simply, it would have been more believable, or it would be more believable if they said, okay, it's just it's developmental mechanisms, it's horizontal gene transfer, and now they're kind of incorporating. But if it was all this stuff, at least it would be somewhat believable. But they have to come up with an explanation for the origin or for the existence of the genome. So that's why they're stuck, really, with mutation, because that's the only way. How else would it get here without some sort of mind or divine intervention or some mysterious mechanism?
Yeah, the idea it has to be mutation because there has to be change to DNA for evolution to be true, and not only change, but change that codes for new features that don't exist in the prior populations.
Right.
Entirely new things have to
Right.
arise.
You know, it's amazing. I'll bring that up to people pretty regularly, and I mean, it's just proof that these guys are blind, and they're completely snowed and brainwashed. You know, when you bring up to them that, hey, look, your mechanism doesn't work, it doesn't add information. You can't show me a peer-reviewed paper that claims it shows that it adds information. It doesn't add new features. You don't get new body parts. It's nothing but a conservative or degenerative mechanism, and it produces nothing new. And you tell that to people, you dare them to prove you wrong. They can't do it. If they're going to believe anyway, it just shows this crowd is totally hoodwinked and brainwashed.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there. I mean, that alone should be, the death knell for that theory. But and these guys in science, I realize I'm talking to people who don't really study this, but the people in science know this. They're not dumb. I mean, they're corrupt, but they're not idiots.
Yeah.
So they have to know this, and since they do know it, it's just a matter of, I don't know if it's satanic influence or if they're just what the deal is, but it's pretty sickening.
Yeah. It's bizarre. I honestly believe there are a great many university professors who are biologists, geneticists, anthropologists, and zoologists that know that are completely convinced that creation is true and evolution is a lie, but they cannot say so because they know they'll lose their jobs. Here's an interesting quote by Peter R. Sheldon in his book Complexity Still Running, Nature, published volume 350, an article in Nature, March 1991. He said this: the awesome morphological complexity of organisms such as vertebrates that have far fewer individuals on which selection can act therefore remains somewhat puzzling, for me at least, despite the geologic timescales available. In other words, it's a puzzle that, despite the hundreds of millions of years available for evolution, in his mind, that things don't seem to change. What the heck? Why is the stasis? And what you mentioned, stasis, this is the word used by many scientists, including people like Richard Dawkins, to describe the fossil record. That organisms seem to be in stasis, which means that they seem not to be changing any in their anatomy in any way. They just remain the kind of creature they are, and that's just it. And so they call it stasis. What they believe is that the organism becomes so well adapted to its particular environment, then there's no more selective pressure to change. And so natural selection weeds out mutations which would attempt to change it because it's already so well adapted that any change would be a negative. So, but that's just picking and choosing. That's special pleading. All we know from the fossil record is creatures are either extinct and no longer exist on this planet that we find in the fossils, or they're unchanged. That's
Well,
it.
the other absurd notion about it is that the environment would stay the exact same for hundreds of millions of years.
Right. That's another problem because the environment's constantly changing. I mean, there could be certain environments that change relatively little. Maybe if the uniformitarianist idea were true, if that were true.
Well, but think about even like in the ocean, for example. There's fish can swim to different areas. There's migrations. There's new predators coming around. Same thing on land. I mean, you have environmental catastrophes, temperature changes, fluctuations in the weather.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just now 1,000 years, maybe if that 3 or 4 or 5,000 years, maybe the environment would stay pretty much the same. But for millions of years, that's really not believable.
Yeah, it's difficult to believe the environment wouldn't change some pretty dramatically in over tens, if not hundreds of millions of years.
Yeah, well, they even admit that it was the last ice age or at the end of the last ice age, according to their plan. There were roaming the Earth these giant mammals, these oversized mammals, like the armadillo the size of a car, for example, and these giant dragonflies. And so something obviously happened with the environment that made all that change.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, if there was some sort of worldwide change in the environment, the idea that an organism could pretty much stay the same, stasis, for millions of years, 68, 80 million years, is just far-fetched.
Right. You know what I've discovered is browsing when I try to screen share things. I notice that people in the Hangout can see it, but when I go back and if I've looked to see how it worked out in a video, you know, that when the Hangouts actually become a video on YouTube, and I don't see the screen sharing going on.
Oh, on the live feed?
Yeah, and I don't know what the heck is with that. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what's going on with that, because it's disappointing to me. If I screen share something, I'd like for everybody that sees the video afterward to be able to see what I'm screen sharing. I'm not so sure it works. I need to test that more. But speaking of megafauna, let me show you some. I like that subject, by the way, of megafauna. I think it's fascinating that these creatures achieved such monstrous size in the past. Let me see if I can screen share for you some fascinating pictures.
And they downplay that, if you notice. You know, there's this mystique about the dinosaurs being so big, but they downplay the idea that rodents were also huge, and you know that normal mammals were giant too.
Yeah.
And just a few thousand years ago.
That's right. Are you seeing a picture that I'm screen sharing?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, I see it.
A single picture, or do you see a list of them?
No, there's several.
Several? Okay, I'm trying to zoom in on one particular one, and it's not showing the one. I guess it's only showing the list somehow. Okay, so that's not working. I'm trying to use ACDC to screen share that, and it's not. When I go full screen with one of the pictures, it doesn't show it. It's just showing the application.
Well, I could see him. Which one were you talking about?
Well, let me. Maybe I can do it a different way. Hold on a second. My wife's calling me. Hang on.
You still there, Remy?
In part, yeah.
Yeah, you're just kind of hanging. You got two things going on at once?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, it's 12 o'clock in the midnight.
Where are you? You must be on the East Coast.
Yep, I'm South Ontario.
Ah, okay. Yeah, it's 11 here. I'm in Texas. You got to get up early?
I'm gonna start getting up early. No, I don't work. I'm disability income.
Oh, are you?
I got fed up with people turning me down because either someone else got the job or they just didn't want to chance my disability. So.
Oh, really?
Like I applied for my dad's work several times. He told me they were looking for someone who's disabled and get the job. So I just got fed up with it.
I'm sorry to hear that. So do you have trouble finding ways to fill up the day, or?
Sometimes.
Yeah. I think I have to stay busy, or I'd probably drive my wife crazy.
Hey, I'll be back in just a minute, guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
Give me about 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta get out of the house, or I go bananas myself.
Yeah, that's the difficulty with me though. Got a crooked spine, scoliosis,
Mm.
that makes it hard for me to walk even maybe a block or two away. And
Wow, how long has it been bad like that?
since I was about 10,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh, man.
And in the last year or so, my left knee is starting to go dead when I walk, so it's even worse.
Mm.
So, yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that.
lucky.
Dang. So, are you in a wheelchair, or do you
Nope.
still walk? You still walk?
Yeah, I can still walk, just not very stable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay though.
So they done surgery on you?
I've been told by the doctors that they shouldn't because I'm on blood thinners as well. I have a heart condition called Marfan's,
Mm.
which is a mutation. It's usually a hereditary mutation, but I draw the short stick and I didn't get it. I didn't. Oh, sorry. I got Marfan's, but not from anybody I'm related to. So,
Mm. Oh, so you
but,
shouldn't do the surgery because of the blood thinners.
yeah, but I do enjoy going outside every now and then. Just
Yeah.
recently, it's been raining quite a bit though.
Yeah, it's been
And
raining here too.
it's starting to cool down.
Yeah, I bet. You're probably about to get some snow, aren't you?
We got snow about 3 weeks ago, and then it went away. We've been anywhere between 2 to 10 degrees Celsius, so I'm guessing that's like 60 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around there.
So that's not bad so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still in fall mode. We haven't had any really. I don't even think we've had a cold snap yet. I mean, it was chilly, but nothing like any sort of winter weather yet. So we're kind of getting on that fringe though. It probably should start happening, I guess. That we get something. But down here, I mean, if you get a cold snap, usually if you wait a couple days, it'll go away.
Yeah. I don't know if I think it was 2 years ago that we had practically fall weather all the way up until the first week of December, and then it was like 2 days later. Within 2 days. Sorry, a 2 day gradual. It dropped below zero.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't very
Yeah.
wasn't very comfortable for anybody. Then we got snow a week later, and it went to freezing rain. That was 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard. I don't know about where you are, but like in the northwest here, like in Minnesota, they just in Michigan, they had a really kind of a rough winter. Or it just could have drug on anyway into the spring and wouldn't seem to go away. We kind of have it lucky down here because our winters usually are pretty much done by Valentine's Day. So the middle of February, and we could get something cold after that, but it's usually brief and it'll move on. So, I mean, I'm a landscaper, so I kind of pay attention to the dates for that because you can start planting flowers, spring flowers near or after the last freeze. Usually, end of February, you're pretty safe.
So it's a hit and miss with you guys, is it?
Yeah, I would say most of the time after Valentine's Day, you're pretty safe as far as the really bad weather. But you can still be cool, but nothing like down in the teens or anything. Usually that's pretty. January is our coldest month, I guess, and that's the best chance for that kind of weather.
Yeah. It's definitely the coldest month here. Maybe the beginning of February.
Yeah.
You guys are getting ready for Thanksgiving soon, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, next week, I guess. Yeah. it's a big time of the year for our family. That seems like when you've got Thanksgiving, we got just for whatever reason, our family has a lot of birthdays and stuff and various anniversaries, and it just seems like it's one thing after another, which, I'm not complaining necessarily, but it's just the way it is. It's a very busy time of year. And we usually try to work in our vacation somewhere in there because I work. That's the only time I have off of work. So it was hustle and bustle. But the good thing is my work slows down a little bit. So I'm not working long hours.
Okay, I was gonna say it's not good to stop working.
No, I don't stop. I got to keep the guys busy, or they'll leave. So I've got a couple crews I've got to keep busy all winter. So if it were up to me, I'd like to stop and take them a couple months off, but they got to keep their families eating, paying the bills. It's kind of, when you are responsible for other families, it's a little bit of more pressure than just simply on yourself.
Maybe you guys should try to do the work lottery pool. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but when once a week everybody chips in $1 towards however many tickets you guys can have for whatever your lottery is.
I see.
And if you guys win,
yeah.
I've
never bought a lottery ticket. I wouldn't be good at it.
Yeah. Like I've heard people say that's gambling, but if you really look at the word gambling, it means you're risking money, and it's $1. You're gonna risk $1. And,
no.
Like I agree. I'm not gonna go to Vegas or a casino because that's gambling. You go then you're likely gonna go in there and $20, and then you start with $20, and you got $1,000 later. Well, I gotta stop.
Yeah, we went to Vegas last year, and it was the first time we've ever been, and I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and gamble. I'll just, it's probably sinful, but I wasn't gonna gamble much, and we got in it, and I was only betting like $5, for a hand or whatever for the blackjack. I started losing some, and it wasn't that much money, but I was like, man, this isn't even fun. So we just stopped. We stopped within an hour and a half, and the rest of the trip we just did shows and stuff. It's like, this sucks. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Now going back on evolution though, I brought up to somebody recently. I didn't catch a name, and about the Spinosaurus aegypticus. There was a special documentary on TV maybe a month ago, or actually probably my time. It probably could have been a couple of months ago, and they were talking about how in the early 20th century there was a museum where a guy had a substantial amount of bones from this dinosaur he called Aegypticus. And it was all lost because in some disaster with the building. So I raised a good point that if they don't know what the beast looks like, and all they have is a few spine parts, a few parts of the tail, and maybe a part of the hand, and I think they had a bit of a jaw. That's it.
Well, from that's all you need if you're an
Yeah. But my point to him was, in this documentary, they went from Turkey all the way down to Africa to get parts for this dinosaur. They don't even know what the heck it looks like. All they have is vague, distanced photos of the guy standing next to a reconstructed skeleton.
That's what they did with Ardipithecus sediba. They found its bones over a 1.1 square kilometer area and put them together and said, look, here's the creature.
Well, when they can't do that, they'll usually just draw it. People are suckers for drawings too.
Oh, yeah.
you know.
So, are you guys able to see what I'm screen sharing?
Yeah, some sort of big shell.
Okay. Yeah, I figured out a way. I just dragged and dropped some megafauna pics I have on my computer into a media player, Windows Movie Maker. And apparently, if you show in a movie, it stays on the screen. So this is a nautiloid. And that's how big they were in the past. You know how big they are today? About as big as the inside of that thing. They're very small. That's the size of cats in the past. That's how big they got. Or is that, wait a minute, no, no, that's a wolf. I'm sorry, that's wolves. That's the original dog kind. Look at that, guys. That
Amazing.
skeleton. That's the dogs that existed on the pre-flood world in the days of Adam and Noah. But that dog there is as big as a 600-pound black bear.
That'd tear you up.
That would give tigers a run for their money.
No, that's as big as an 800-pound grizzly bear, right there, or more. Try getting away from a dog that size. Now, man was probably much bigger then too, but still, consider the size of that creature. That's how big dogs were in the past. Humongous, big as bears. Now, that's what the evolutionist believes the original bear looked like, and they may be right. It may be close. It was, as far as we can tell, it was a short-snouted bear, but it was bigger than any bear that exists in the world today. And there's some more interesting ones to show here.
They also had Barbary lions, but were another half the size or more.
This is how big birds got, guys. That's a mock-up of a bird based on fossils of birds that were found in the fossil record.
Yeah, the American Indians told tales that the birds, or the flying things, whatever they were, used to pick up small kids and take them away.
Yeah, well, a bird that size could pick up a man.
Thunderbirds.
There's active tales of that in Papua New Guinea.
Wolves can pick up a small deer or a small wolf, a young one, and carry it off. An eagle, eagle can do it. A large eagle can pick up a small deer. These are clam shells on the top of the Andes Mountains, about 3,000 foot altitude. They're in the closed position, which proves that they died during the flood, because when a clam dies, its shell opens, because the muscles that hold it closed relax. So these were buried in sediments alive, with their shells closed, and that's why they couldn't open. These are clams. You know how big a clam is today. You can fit them in the palm of your hand. These are hundreds of pounds clams. They're on top of the Andes Mountains. That's a fossil of a hummingbird, unchanged, and supposedly millions of years. Still a hummingbird.
Same thing. Same. Yeah.
This is a model of a dragonfly that existed on the Earth prior to the flood, about a 4 to 5 foot wingspan. That's how big dragonflies were. Unbelievable. Isn't that crazy? This is an armadillo. It's a specific type. It may be the original created kind of armadillo from which the varieties of armadillo that we have today come. It's as big as a Volkswagen Beetle. That's an armadillo.
Amazing.
Isn't that crazy? This is a sloth. Now, when he was fleshed out, this guy was living. He probably weighed 2,000 pounds or more. What do you think? I'm going to say at least 1,600 pounds.
You think all those bones are the original, or is that a cast?
Oh, no, that's cast. Probably. Usually they don't use, but I don't know. Sometimes they do use the original bones. Other times they make casts out of plastic, you know.
There was actually tales of in South America that these things were still alive up to a few thousand years ago or whatever, and they would say that these things would stink and they would shake the trees.
Sloths? Really?
Yeah, the giant sloth, yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that. Now, this is what a boar looked like, some kind of a pig. This is possibly the original created pig kind, a boar. That's how big it is, standing next to a human woman.
Didn't Hercules fight a pig that big?
I don't know.
Or was it? No, it was Gilgamesh. I think it was Gilgamesh.
And that's I think also a bone from a pig. You see the researcher is holding a normal-sized pig bone and next to what they've found in the fossils. Amazing. These are some of the creatures that existed in the past, no longer exist.
A stressful day for social restful light. Use this directed. Activate reduced hyperhydramine.
Oh, hold on a second. Okay. Look how big they are in comparison to that man. You know, you've got T-Rex there. You've got and some of these other creatures that existed, very huge in size. Now, interesting thing. Look at the deer standing next to the man. That's how big deer got in the past. That's bigger than a moose.
Yeah, there was actually a bird that size too, like the ancestor of a ostrich, but it had more of a emu style body. It was about 8 feet tall or more.
This is a mock-up, a model by the Smithsonian of the size that snakes got to be.
God, that's amazing.
That's a snake, guys. Yeah, you'd be a snake.
Just a totally different world.
There's that. Yeah, there's a questionable photo going around the web about a snake that they actually caught from a helicopter. That big.
This is a sea scorpion. Today's sea scorpions are about 2 feet long. This one is about, I don't know, what, 8, 9 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sloth again, 1,500 to 2,000 pounds.
You know what's amazing about these is the evolutionists will admit that a lot of these animals died out towards the end of the Ice Age, which on their timeline was 10,000 years ago. So I don't know why I kept happening. But so all these mammals and bugs and other organisms that were oversized, these megafauna, lived, but we can't expect that there were oversized lizards, oversized reptiles at the same time.
Oh, but there were. They have
but that's what. Yeah, but they deny that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
it only makes sense though that the megafauna all existed at the same time.
Right.
And including the dinosaurs.
I think the legends of dragons from days of from ancient times are describing giant lizard-like dinosaurs that existed. They would be very much in shape. They would be very much like a Komodo dragon, but much, much bigger. Thousands of pounds bigger. Very much like a Komodo dragon, but very, very large. And I think that's the source of legends of dragons, is giant lizard-type dinosaurs that existed at the same time as the dinosaurs did, of course, but they're probably all extinct today. And so man saw these creatures, and he called them a dragon. And they would have been pretty fierce. Imagine a guy, trying to take on a lizard that had a head big around as, I don't know, a 32-inch or a 38-inch LCD TV screen, its head that wide, and was so big that, it would, if you had a 2-car garage in your house, he wouldn't fit in it, lengthwise. From corner to corner, he wouldn't fit in it. His tail would be, and the tip of his head, he would be too big. It'd be too big. If he crawled on top of a pickup truck, he'd be the whole length of the pickup truck plus about 10 feet, and break the shocks of the truck because he
makes you wonder how in the world they would, if they encountered them, could they kill them, and how maybe could a bow and arrow kill them?
I don't think one man could do it, or if he did, he would be very lucky that he got his sword into like a jugular vein, or a carotid artery. That would be about the only way, because he'd be a meal for it. I think they were probably more often than not. The ones that we have legends of where an individual may have killed them, if there's truth to those stories, they were probably not the bigger ones. They were probably smaller, maybe the size of a very large crocodile, or somewhat bigger. But the really big ones that existed, I think the only way anybody could kill that is a whole group of men with spears attacked it together. Were able to, you had 15 or 30 men all stabbing the thing in the neck at the same time. That might do it.
Yeah. And the evolutionists
And one
use,
or two of those guys might get unlucky and get mortally wounded or killed on the spot too, trying to do it.
yeah. But yeah, the evolutionists will always say, well, humans couldn't have lived with dinosaurs because the dinosaurs would just kill them because they're so much bigger. So they use that logic. But looking at those pictures you just posted, the bears look out. You wouldn't want to get in a fight with a bear or even that dog or lions. All that stuff was equally as massive, or not equally, but very massive anyway.
Oh yeah.
And would be quite a feat to
Incredibly
catch in a fight. So it was probably all over, and probably man did die a lot.
Oh, I'm sure quite a few guys did. Yeah.
Well, that's, to me, that what I've heard is that's kind of part of the story of Nimrod, is he's able to protect people from all these crazy wild animals, and one of the ways he did that was by building a city with walls.
Might be some truth in that. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, I don't remember where I heard that, but that's what I heard was part of his legend of being a great warrior, because he was able to kill animals, and so therefore he was able to protect the people. From building the cities too. They had walls and everything, and mutual protection somehow was part of his. That's secondary to the Bible. I don't know where. I don't remember where I got it, but I'm just saying that was.
I believe there's truth to a lot of these legends. I believe the legend, the story, the Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, which speaks of Gilgamesh in Enkidu fighting the bull of Humbaba, this massive bull. I believe there's truth to that. They probably did go off. Excuse me. I did some calculations using the story of the Epic of Gilgamesh that were interesting several years ago. In the story of the Epic of Gilgamesh, it gives the distance. I wish I had the numbers in front of me. I can't tell you now. I lost that information when my hard drive crashed. But it gives the distance that they walked to go to this forest to fight Humbaba, this massive bull. And it tells you how long that they took to get there. I forgot how many. It's like 3 days travel or 2 days, something. Now, if you do the math, I did the math. I figured out the average stride of a human being, and then I did the math to figure out what the stride of a human being would have to be for him to walk constantly to get there in the amount of time that the Gilgamesh says they did. I did the calculations and I compared the stride to how big a man would have to be, and I discovered the man would have to be about 12 feet tall to walk that distance that fast, to have a stride long enough to be able to walk that distance. A normal size 6-foot human being couldn't have done it in that amount of time. His stride is too small. So, and another thing that's in that story is that the Epic of Gilgamesh tells you the weight of the war gear, the equipment, the chain mail, and the armor and the weapons that these two men carried, and it gives the ancient measure, the Babylonian measure. And I went onto the internet, looked up that measure, converted it to English pounds, and discovered each man was carrying 500 pounds of weaponry, according to the story. Now, that's if the story is giving us accurate information, okay? But that's what it would be, 500 pounds. So, okay, Tommy, take it easy. Now, what kind of man can put on 500 pounds worth of weaponry and armor and walk around with it? I mean, how big would a man have to be for that not to, to be able to do that? I mean, you'd have to be huge. I mean, massive man for that to wear 500 pounds, carry 500 pounds worth of stuff, and then to be able to do it by walking for miles. What kind of men were these?
Remember how many hours a day you calculated walking?
Yeah, I did the calculations, and I don't remember the math because, like I said, I lost those files when I had saved it all to a text file. When my hard disk crashed, I lost all that information. A lot of research I lost.
I mean,
he was. I estimated a minimum of 12 feet tall to have a stride long enough to be able to
the more I read about the Greeks the Greek gods, and everything, and that those are the people that I think they call gods. I don't even know if they really thought of them as gods, but as perhaps people that the original people from God. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And so then they just kind of through the generations, started referring to them as gods. I don't know.
Hmm.
I think they're originally,
Yeah, deity worship. I mean, ancestor worship. It's called.
right.
Ancient men did deify known people. Some of the people in the Bible were deified by ancient men, uh, such as Shem, Japheth, and Ham were deified by the Hindus. They're called Ham, Kaharma. They're called Japheth, Yapati, and they're called Shem, something else. I can't remember the name. And they thought of them as gods. And other cultures had done the same with various men that are listed in the Table of Nations in the Bible. So they did actually deify these men by word of mouth over a period of a couple of centuries. The legend of these guys, they became gods, or demigods instead of just mortal humans.
Well, if you think of the story of the flood, as it was passed from generation to generation, and you hear of these were the men that made it through the flood, and then these were their sons, their firstborn sons, and so if they, it just if you think of it from the point of view that you don't know what we know about them, everything, then you might say, hey, if they made it through that huge flood, then they must be like God, and then their sons must be like God, and
Yeah, they were something, all right. They were not.
and they're bigger, and they live longer than everybody else, and they're still around, and my daddy's dead, and.
Well, I like to look at it like this: Noah, when he was in his prime, could have taken on the entire the front line of the Dallas Cowboys football team and kicked every one of their behinds with ease. Because as each man approached him, he would probably hit the dirt so fast and hard that he would not get back up.
Right.
I mean, you think about it. You have a 12-foot man with arms as big around as a basket, with forearms that as big around as a basketball, and and a fist as big as a serving bowl. Now, what's going to happen to you if this guy slugs you as hard as he can? He's going to kill you. You want one slug, you're dead. Break your head, crack your skull, break your neck. He could slap you with open hand and kill you. He would be so big and strong, So, I mean, yeah, they would be outrageously formidable humans. That's for sure compared to what we are today.
The pads might save them, huh?
What's that?
The pads might save them. You said it was a football team.
Oh, well, probably not very well. If he,
depending where they hit him.
Yeah, if he brought his fist straight down on the top of his head, he'd crush his neck like a...
probably break the hat, too. Break the helmet.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we've gotten smaller, just like organisms have. And the fossil record shows creatures lived that lived on the earth prior to the flood reached enormous size. It's likely that men did too. Now, the interesting thing is the Bible says there were giants in the earth in those days. So that means that normal men were smaller than them. So if a normal man was 9 to 12 feet tall in Noah's day, how big were the giants? They were bigger than that. They might have been 16 feet tall. Native Americans have a legend, Inuit, Native Americans of northern, eastern North America, in Canada, for example, and the United States. They have a legends of giants that lived in their land that were so big they were able to run alongside the herd of buffalo, grab one of them, and throw it over their shoulder while they were running. So, if it's possible that's an exaggeration. Where stories do get exaggerated. Maybe that is. Maybe they weren't so big they could do that. Maybe the truth is they could actually grab one and just snatch him and throw him to the ground. But on the other hand, maybe there's truth to it. I mean, maybe it is actually accurate. Maybe men were so big they
we're
could
saying that he
literally grab a
invented that.
bison and throw it over their shoulder, while they were running. If that's true, you're looking at a man 16 feet tall,
But you're saying even if it's not true, you're talking about a tall man.
I'm sorry, what was that?
And you're saying even if it's exaggerated some, and you
Oh, yeah,
bring it
even if
down,
it were
you just talk about
exaggerated,
a
this
tall
has got to be
big
some
guy.
outrageously big man for them to exaggerate it to that degree, probably. Yeah. I'm inclined to believe there's truth to it, though, that they probably would be able to grab a bison and pick him up and carry him over the shoulder. I don't know. That might be the exaggerated part. Maybe they could hold it kicking and screaming in their arms,
Yeah.
I don't know. But there's a statue of Gilgamesh from ancient Babylonia, that shows Gilgamesh holding a lion like an unruly house cat against his person.
Right.
And it's no bigger than, to his body, it's smaller than a bobcat is to you and me. It's like a large house cat to him. And this is a lion. So if that statue is an accurate representation of how big Gilgamesh actually was, he was a very big man, probably 16 feet or larger. Now, I don't know. Nobody knows how big men really got to be and how big the giants were before the flood, because the evidence is limited. We have stone tools. There are a couple of stone tools that were handheld that have been found that were made by man that look like, if they're not an axe head, they look like maybe they're a hand chisel, something that a man would hold in his hand and pick and chisel at other rocks or wood with. If that's true, the man's hand would have had to have been humongous to hold this stone and do that. So we have limited evidence, but we have legends that tell of it. And there's got to be some truth to it, because Scripture also tells us, of the giants that lived prior to the flood. And the fossil record shows this. Megafauna, is a fact. So it's likely man was bigger too, and he got smaller after the flood, just like everything else did. And so if these men were giants compared to pre-flood men, they had to be far bigger than a normal pre-flood man, which was already huge compared to you and me.
Right. And I guess the Noah and all his sons were probably big too.
Oh, yeah.
And then for a few generations, or a couple of generations, that bigness was there.
Yeah.
But
man probably got small quickly within a couple of generations after the flood.
There's a chart that shows Shem, how long he lived, after the flood, and his sons.
I've seen those. I got one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Shem lives past, a couple of his grandsons, great grandsons.
Yeah, their lifespans dramatically decreased after the flood, because the atmosphere of the earth was changed because of the flood.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see one of those on the other two. If they had the information, it would be interesting to see on the other two sons. But I don't think I don't know, I guess they're too short on the other two sons. I don't think they gave the ages on the other two sons, did they? They just gave the names of the generations. They weren't as detailed as Shem's.
The funny thing is, the evolutionists claim that life gets bigger and stronger and healthier over millions of years, but that's quite the opposite of what the truth is. The truth, things get smaller and weaker and dumber.
That's opposite of the evidence.
I'm sorry?
It's opposite of the evidence.
Yes,
it's opposite. Evidence is science, but
that's right.
But yet we're unscientific.
The evidence is opposite of that. You're exactly right. Things have gotten smaller, weaker, and likely dumber, whereas the evolutionist claims that life forms got bigger and stronger and healthier because of evolution. That massive varieties of creatures, like megafauna, evolved, and today they're smaller. So apparently everything's gotten smaller, weaker, and dumber.
Well, that's what I don't know. Studies show that they knew more before the Dark Ages too than we do now. Now we're just rediscovering it.
Well, ancient man sure had knowledge that we don't have today, like how to make stones of completely irregular shapes fit together so fine that you can't slip a piece of paper between them. We don't know how they did it. There's only two ways to do it that I can think of. One is that the stone had to be heated and molded while it was still soft and very, very hot. Or the stone was softened chemically by a process unknown to us today, and then molded, and then the chemistry changed and the rock hardened. They may have had some chemical soup that they knew of that they could soak a rock in that would make it plastic. That's the only two possibilities.
Well, there is a third one.
Done by heat or chemistry, one of the two.
Well, there's a third one. I wonder sometimes if some of the things they built was right after the flood and the rocks weren't as hard yet.
Mm.
And then after 100 years or so, they got really hard.
Yeah, I don't think that would work. Because,
I don't think it's all of them. I'm just saying some of them. Some might have been that way.
Materials dry out pretty fast and become brittle.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that would work. I am inclined to believe they did it with chemistry. They knew some kind of chemical mixture that the rocks could be soaked in, and it would turn the rock soft. And then as the chemicals dried out, the rock became hard again.
Yeah. Well, even so, even if it was soft the way I said it or whatever, I mean, to move those things, it's still going to be some kind of ingenuity.
Oh, absolutely. It's illogical to believe they could have carved them to fit the way they do, because if you examine these megalithic structures that have these extremely irregular stones, they fit together, each one of them so precise that to try to cut those with stone tools to cutting stone, it's absolutely implausible that they would have been able to do that unless they had metal tools. Then you could say, well, it's possible, but it'd still be so unlikely. But to get the stones to fit so perfectly with so outrageously irregular shapes, it doesn't seem to work. Even with metal tools, I have doubts they could do that. They had to have deformed the stone to make them fit together that way, and that's the only way I can think of. So that technology is lost. We don't know how to do that today. Unless they could make stone, by taking the right materials, but when it's still soft and plastic, mold it and let it concrete into hard stone. That would still be a technology we don't have today.
Yeah, I don't know. I just was thinking that there was an interesting thing I read about how they. I don't remember. Anyway, it was something said that made me think, and that was that the Babylonians and the Egyptians, and you can read it in the Bible where the Jews were making bricks for the Egyptians, and that the Babylonians used brick, and so the Israelites used stone. So anyway, part of that was they were saying that you could tell the influence of the Israelites were their stone buildings, or you could might trace some of that. Where they use stone instead of brick. That's just something thrown out there. I don't know if it relates to it. I'm just kind of throwing that at you.
Yeah, I believe man has lost intelligence since the flood. I believe that men that lived before the flood had IQs much higher than ours today. A highly intelligent man today has an IQ of 135 or above, something like that, or at least 130. I think an average man a highly intelligent man prior to the flood had an IQ of 200 or 230. I believe they were far, far more intelligent than we are today.
I don't know, because I never took an IQ test, so I don't really know what that point.
An average person is, for most, it seems, most IQ tests seem to say that average intelligence is between 100 and 120. on the upper side of 100 of normal is 120. Above 120 is extremely intelligent, and 150 or 60 and above is genius, I think. Yeah. Average is 80. Remy says 80 to 100. I thought it was around 100 to 110 was average, typical average. Maybe you're right. I don't know. But if somebody has an IQ of 130, they're considerably above average intelligence. They're quite intelligent. Anybody who has an IQ of 150 is nearly a genius. So 150, 60, that's your genius level there. Yeah.
But is that measured on knowledge or what you can figure out?
Well, what you can figure out, how you can discern relationships and patterns and make an understanding of things like that. A variety of things. I took a Mensa test once, 2:00 in the morning, about 10 years ago. I was half asleep. I was really sleepy. I scored 138 on it, and I was half asleep. And I was very groggy. I think if I had taken that test at 10 in the morning after having had breakfast and a cup of coffee, I probably would have scored in the upper 40s, 140.
Oh,
because, yeah? Well, I say that because, like I say, I was really sleepy at the time.
Yeah.
It was 2 in the morning, and I
What
was
did you score?
very groggy. I scored 138.
Well, that's pretty good. So you're just trying to be humble by saying the average is 110.
Well, no, I think that is. I think that is average, 100 to 110. Some people say 100 to 120.
Well, it may have used to been, but like Rennie said, showing that he says it's 80 to 100, right?
Hmm.
Then that maybe it's gone down.
I don't really know, to be honest, what the psychologists or whatever scientists say.
Yeah, I don't know how you can tell. I mean, they say there's a fine line between genius and crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, also there is. It's true that intelligence tests really only measure certain kinds of intelligence too. There are other kinds of intelligence they don't take into account, such as musical skills, artistic skills. Uh, there's intelligence in being able to discern, to predict things that are going to happen, and then to be right, making judgments about various things and to come up with the correct, a prediction about things. That's a certain kind of intelligence that is not really measurable or taken into account, I don't think, by most intelligence tests.
Oh, that's what I was wondering. I see a lot of intelligent people that, in different ways, they're not intelligent like me, but they know something I don't know and how to do something a lot better than I do. But
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, mechanical engineering is another. Some of those intelligence tests take into account things that would require a person to be mechanically inclined mentally, to be able to discern shapes and relationships, but not too much. So I think there would be another intelligence as well that's not taken into account by these tests very well, whereby, let's say somebody was given a series of a collection of things that are mechanical and told, can you make me something that will do a thing? And they're able to do it, whereas an average Joe Blow would be at a loss. That, I think, demonstrates a particular kind of intelligence, a mechanical intelligence that intelligence tests don't really take into account very well. So those tests are not really all that conclusive. I think they limit. They measure a certain range of intelligences, but they probably leave certain things out that would also contribute to somebody's intelligence.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it was, there are just certain people I've seen that are, they're just smart in other ways. They just, they can't think the way I'm thinking. When I organize things and whatever, but they can. I don't know how to explain it. They just, but they can, like a woman can juggle things. She can juggle like 20 things and not miss a step.
Yeah.
and I can't, even though I can maybe calculate, much better than that woman can this or that, much quicker. As long as I'm concentrating on one or two things, then I can.
Yeah.
Then I can look good, but if I got to juggle 20 things like she's doing, I may not be able to do it.
Well, and then consider this, I scored 138 half asleep when I took that test, and yet I'm terrible at mathematics. I can't even do high school algebra very well. I'm really, really lousy at mathematics. Not good at all. My mind just does not do math well. So I scored high, and yet I'm terrible at mathematics. So my being terrible at mathematics didn't prevent me from getting a high score on that Mensa test. So that tells you that the Mensa test is not taking mathematical intelligence, the ability to do math well, into their into account. Now, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe they don't think that should be included, in their intelligence test. I don't know.
Maybe it's better than what we think. How they decide upon it.
But I do believe that. I do believe
it's certain people that decide. It's like it's certain people who have decided that this is the test, and it's like they're doing that test according to what they think is intelligence.
Yeah.
So that there's a
That's
leeway
true
there.
too. Yeah, I don't think that any intelligence test is really the end all. It's not going to give you an actual intelligence. It might give you a rough estimate of somebody's intelligence, but I don't think any of them are going to be truly satisfactory. But I do believe that people before the flood were much more intelligent than we are today, because the technologies that they had, and they developed them so quickly. And I think that some of that technology came down to them from Shem, Japheth, and Ham, and maybe even Noah, because these guys lived for centuries before the flood. And, think about it. If you lived 700 years, how many things could you become master of in 700 years?
Right.
You could spend 30 years saying, okay, I'm going to master mathematics over the next 20, 30 years. You could spend the next, that was fun. I'm going to master mechanical engineering now. I want to be able to be a master it. So you study mechanical engineering and stonemasonry, and you become a master of those things. Then you might say, well, gee, I want to master astronomy. I want to know everything there is about the stars and what we know about them. And you study that for 20 years, and okay, I got that under my belt. By the time you're 600, 700 years old, you could be a master of virtually every field of science or knowledge that existed at the time. So, it's possible, I'm just saying. So, who knows what Shem, Japheth, and Ham knew? They might have known a whopping lot, and then passed that knowledge on quickly at the Tower of Babel affair to other men, or it got to them from their offspring, maybe somehow. I can imagine Shem, Japheth, and Ham teaching their offspring. Look, if you want to do this is what you got to do. You got to pay close attention. We're going to spend all day, and I'm going to teach you some things. And they could just be like the Grandmaster Poopahs. They would be the great teachers of the world at that time. Once they got off the ark, they were the ones with all the high knowledge. And they could have imparted a lot of that knowledge to people and helped kickstart man's technology right after the flood.
Right, because they lived for 100 years after the flood too, so they were teachers.
Right, they could have been great teachers. Yeah, that's right. They could have taught other people everything they knew, and who could have taught other people everything they knew. Yeah. It's remarkable. The pre-flood world is a fascinating subject. We don't really know what they knew and what they did. The Bible doesn't really tell us too much about it. But a bronze bell with a figure of a woman on top of it was found inside a coal seam, and that was probably a pre-flood artifact, and it's beautiful. And they had very high skills in metallurgy, apparently. They were able to make bronze, and they were able to mold it with high precision to make beautiful artifacts prior to the flood. So if that bronze bell that was found inside a coal seam was in fact a pre-flood spell, and I think it probably was if it was in coal. So that implies that man had very high skills at metallurgy prior to the flood. After all, the Bible says, who was it? There was an artificer of brass. It describes somebody as an artificer of
Yeah,
brass.
most of the people are on it's in Cain's line that he describes about being experts at all that.
Mm.
But I think they were the first experts. It doesn't mean they didn't pass it on and that other people didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Bible describes that they were the first ones.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Maybe because Cain was one of the first born and got a head start on everybody.
Yeah.
And then, so, the sons and everything. I don't know. It doesn't really explain how they got that knowledge.
It says here in Genesis 4:22, and Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. So Tubal-Cain was a teacher of people on how to make implements out of brass. He was an instructor of every artificer. In other words, he was the world's master metallurgist, apparently, at the time.
Yeah. So he did teach everybody.
Right. Anybody who wanted to know how to make metal and make things out of metal, they came to Tubal-Cain to be taught. That might be how he made his living, in fact, teaching other people. He might have done it for money or for other goods, bartered. Oh, you want to learn how to make brass and things out of brass? Great, that's going to cost you a month's wages. Can you afford me? Who knows?
You better go to one of my apprentices if you can't afford me.
Right. Yeah. Go see the guy in the next town. I taught him. If you want to pay me, go see him.
Yeah. Just tell him to send my 10% to me.
Right. Yeah. I get this pyramid scheme.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they came up with schemes. I mean, they had to. They turned evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so much they had to flood. Had to flood them.
I'm disappointed that there's no evolutionists willing to come in and debate tonight. I sure did want to debate evolution for a while this evening. I think maybe they've had their hat handed to them by creationists so much that they fear it. They'll debate you if you enter one of their hangouts,
Right.
it seems, but they don't want to come to a Christian's debate room. And I think the reason for that is the atheists have a history of whenever a Christian goes into a hangout, it's like they're in a den of wolves. You've got one or two creationists with 5 or 6 atheists, and it's run by atheists. And that way, if you're making a point that's too good, they don't like it, they can just talk over you and stuff and try to prevent you from making your argument. They don't have that. They can't get away with that very long. In my room, I'll force them to be cordial and try to carry on a real conversation and let other people say something. And but they get away with talking over you constantly, and you can't shut them up. And it's difficult to have something to say because they want to interrupt you. Oh, they just jump right in over you and talk over you constantly. That's the way they like to play their game, and that's why the most popular, most prominent atheists on the internet, on YouTube, for example, like Aaron Raw and Thunderfoot, these guys, they refuse all opportunities, all challenges to engage in a structured debate with a moderator. They'll happily debate somebody if the opportunity arises sometimes when they're in an atheist-run chat room full of atheists, because then they can talk over you and mute you and shut you up and yell at you and stuff. But they won't go outside of that to debate. They won't engage in a structured debate because then they can't stop the creationists from making their arguments. They have to be allowed to be heard. And so I think that's the biggest reason they don't like to go outside of atheist chat rooms to debate, and they simply won't engage in a structured debate.
Well, when you really don't have any facts to back you up, all
Yeah.
you have is rhetoric. And that's really what they do, is they come in mocking and switching conversations and always trying to, well, like the dude the other day was trying to say, the difference between population and individual? And it doesn't even matter. What's the point of that? I mean, it's all about certain individuals changing, right? And then the rest of the population dying off, and then the whole population. And so there's no coordination between the population and the lesser population, the individual. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
whether you state it as individuals or population or whatever, there's no evidence there to move But that's what they do. Is he keeps yelling at, well, I'm talking about population, but what does that mean? What does that mean? You're talking about population?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean a thing. But that's what they just accuse you of not. I mean, I had this guy in the same argument here recently that I'm still typing to, and he says that in Josephus the Christians rewrote it so it sounded like Jesus was in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then about 2 paragraphs later, he's talking about contradictions in the Bible. Well, if they rewrote Josephus, why couldn't they rewrite the Bible to make sure there's no contradictions? You see what I'm saying? I mean, what logic is that? I'm going to rewrite Josephus, but not my Bible, even though people think there's contradictions in it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? If they're going to rewrite one, why can't they rewrite the other to make sure there's no problems with it?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And but it actually. Even though there's a few difficulties because we don't understand the full circumstance, even though there's really not that much,
Yeah.
Those difficulties show that they were honest when they wrote it, copied it over to the next thing, right? They didn't get together and go, oh, let's smooth this out and make it look better. They just wrote down what was written down before. See what I'm saying? That's how scholars, even secular scholars, know that it's an honest book, because they didn't write out any of the difficulties.
Yeah.
What was that? Is that Remy or you that are you listening to something?
Yeah, I was listening to another hangout for a moment just to see what they're talking about. I was hoping that some evolutionists would come in here and debate evolutionism and creation with me, but it looks like either tonight's not a good night, or I think they shine from it because they really don't want to try to support their beliefs, or maybe some of both. Who knows what?
Well, if you need to, I don't know, if you want to go to that other hangout, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I might do that.
Hanging in here because you guys are.
Yeah, it looks. I might do that since this hangout's pretty much turned out to be a dud.
Oh, thanks. I'm a dud. You calling me a dud? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you know what I mean. No opponents to discuss things with and show that their worldview is not to be believed.
Right.
Yeah.
A little controversy there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay, brother. Thanks for popping in.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, adios, man. God bless.
Well, Remy, I guess I am going to call this one a quits. It turned out to be a dud. Tonight's not a good night, I guess, for drawing debaters.
But it is Sunday night, so most people are getting ready to go to work.
Yeah, that's true,
Getting a
too.
bit early.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you popping in, and hope you have a good weekend.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, great.
I hope you did too.
Yeah, it's pretty good, I guess.
How's Sharon doing, anyways?
Well, she's doing okay, I guess. Well, her heel is badly bruised right now, so she's hobbling around, but she'll be all right. It's
Okay.
going to take time to heal. Okay, well, thanks, Remy. Have a good evening. I'm going to kill the hangout, I guess.
Mhm.
We'll catch you next time. Thanks for coming.
Bon voyage, everybody, and I hope you believe in Jesus sooner or later. All right.
Well, they
Bye.
all will. Bye.